What's going on, boys? No Guides here. Welcome back to another video. You're probably thinking on the top right hand corner, what is that? Well, that is now a new feature that came out in patch update number 11. It allows you to see your input in relation to the, should I say, what the game inputs yours. So basically, the one on the left is your local input, and the one on the right is a server input. So you can basically see how much lag you are under. Now, first of all, I want to say this came out in patch update number 11. As of today, is the 23rd of the second it's 23rd second of 2021, of course. But of course, it's not out yet on Xbox or PlayStation. So if you're on that, it should be out hopefully by next week or something. I'm not too sure when. Ideally by Tuesday, but it could be even later than that. You know, we don't know when EA are going to release their patches. The second thing is I'm referring to the two controllers. The one in the background, ignore that. You might have seen that before. I don't even know how I even have that. Maybe it's because I'm verified or whatever. I don't know, but this is on my PC account, by the way. I just want to make this clear. So this is on my PC account. So this is not my PlayStation account. So I'm actually recording this on the PC. So how does it work and how did you get it? Well, the first thing I want to show you is number one, it's also very easy to do. So I'm gonna kick the ball out of play first. I need to go over some few things first. The first thing is it takes into account your actual controller settings. So if you have so for example, I use old school ISS Pro Evo control settings. So I'm just going to change them now so you can see what controls I use. I use square to shoot, or X. This is the old school ISS control settings. I still use the same thing. So if you have these settings, or let's say you have any old settings that you do use, it will only show the controller settings that you change. So it won't remap back to normal game. So I won't be making videos using this because for obvious reasons I can't see it in game. For example, like now you've seen I've changed to ISS controller settings. So you can see now, like, you know, when I move the goalkeeper out, or when I head the ball out of play, for example, or like let's say when I boot the ball out, or let's say I pass the ball, or let's say I run to the ball, see I'm holding the R1 button, pressing circle to slide tackle. So it takes into account the actual control settings. So if you do ever send a clip to EA, let's say you found a bug in a game, or let's say you send a clip to me, let's say for example you want me to analyze your gameplay, if you are using different controller settings, please make sure that you do mention that your controller settings are remapped. And don't forget, I do stream on twitch.tv/NeilGuys, links down below in the description, where you can send me your gameplay and I'll actually analyze it during the week, kind of like a drop-in session where you can send me your clips and analyze it, and I'll tell you what you're doing wrong. So how you turn it on, you go to settings, you go to visual, and you go to the bottom and you have input overlay. That's the one you want to go over. There's three options. There's off, there's input only, and there's local and input. So off just means it's off literally. Input only means it only shows the local input from your end, so what you're physically pressing on the button. That's the control on the left, only one controller will show up. And local input online response will show the one on your left, which is your local one, and the one on the right is basically the one that are processed by the game. So in theory, to measure delay, if in theory you have no delay, they should be in sync. So right now they are completely in sync. So in theory I should have no delay, but it's never going to be like that, because even though I now have a lease line, so before, back in the day, I never had a good internet, because now I pay an absolute fortune, which is absolute must for a content creator, for a lease line. My internet is now fixed, so I shouldn't have any issues. I got a really good internet. And I live in the UK, so the servers are not too far away. It's not like I was living like in some continents. I know, like for example in Africa, for example, the servers are so far away, so do bear that in mind. The second thing is the control on your right doesn't just take into account the servers. So you can argue the one on the right shows your inputs after they've been processed by the server, but it also takes into account your network connection. So if you're in major delay, let's say for example I had my old internet connection and I used to get a lot of delay, it won't just take into account the servers, or also take into account your network connection. So if for example you haven't got the best of internet, you might see the one on the right out of sync. It might not be due to the game data servers or to the servers misregistering your information. It could be because your internet is not that good. So that is one thing to bear in mind. So if you are watching this video and you're from a certain location, do bear in mind that discrepancy. The second thing is it doesn't work in online peer-to-peer games. It only works from games on servers. So if you are playing seasons, from my knowledge, I think drafts potentially might not be on servers. I think it's apparently peer-to-peer. We can only tell when we go into a draft game. But if you do play, let's say, a peer-to-peer, like an online game, or let's say you play a friendlies, you cannot see it because on the right hand side it's only in relation to the game data servers and your network, but it's not for peer-to-peer. So if you are playing peer-to-peer, bear in mind that won't really be there. So of course, take that into bear that in mind with a grain of salt. The second thing I wanted to say is it registers all your inputs. So you can see my left analog stick here. You can see if I barely move my left analog stick like so, you see if I barely move my left analog stick, it registers that. If I then fully extend my left analog stick, it registers that as well. It also registers stuff like the D-pad tactics. Like here, I'm using the D-pad tactics, as you can see, and simultaneously it's activating the D-pad tactics. So you can see all the buttons that you are using in the game. You can, even if you press your left analog stick down, or let's say your right analog stick down, you can see that as well. So it's very easy to see exactly what buttons you're pressing. The only thing it doesn't measure is, let's say you're using analog sprint, it doesn't register the R2, you know, the analog sprint is the R2 button. Well, obviously the amount of pressure you apply, like imagine the R2 button being like an accelerator in your car. Obviously the more pressure you apply, the faster you would run. So if your analog sprint is on, the only downside is it doesn't register how much pressure you're applying to the right analog stick. It only measures the actual 1 or 0, like binary numbers, like, you know, is it activated, yes or no? So it's not like a volume knob, it's like a switch basically, on and off like a light switch. So it doesn't really register if you're using analog sprint. That's probably the only downside. Another downside is you can't move it. Unfortunately, it's stuck in the top right corner of the screen. If you're using, I'm using co-op, so it's not that bad, but if you do use tele broadcast or any of those controller settings, do bear in mind that it might be a bit too big, so you can't resize it, you can't move it around. I wish you could resize it. I've given my feedback hopefully to EA, but you can't resize the controller settings, you can't move it to a certain location, you can't increase or decrease the transparency, and you can't set up remaps. So if you are going to be recording tutorials, let's say for example you're a content creator and you record tutorials and you're not using classic controller settings, you cannot use this to record tutorials if you're using different controller settings, so do bear that in mind. And as you can see, that was lag there. Now I'm actually playing on PC. My PC isn't that powerful. It's pretty decent, but it's not as powerful enough to record the game and to play it at the same time. So the lag you're seeing is actually game lag. So do bear in mind there might be discrepancies. So if you are playing, for example, on a PlayStation version, the old version, you might see the menus lag. If you are playing on PC, and let's say your PC is not good enough to handle it, you might see your PC gaming lag. So it might not be to do with the servers directly, but it could be due to your actual game itself. So do bear that in mind. So anyway, like I mentioned, it registers all your inputs. You can turn this on and off if you want to. Peer-to-peer, it doesn't work, and it does work for online. It takes into account your connection, and it takes into account the server. So the one on the left, as I said, is local. The one on the right is, it registers the point at which the servers are connected. In all honesty, you're still going to receive lag, even if you've got the best connection in the world, and let's say they're both completely in sync, you're still going to experience lag. So do bear that in mind. So that is one thing, but you can probably try to measure them. And don't forget as well, you can turn them on and off in the settings whenever you want. Just go over to settings, go over to visual, and use local input online response for both of them. And of course, you do have the net connection monitoring as well. I wanted to show you something. I just realized, sorry, I just forgot on PC, if you press Alt Tab, it kicks you out. I think it's like an anti-cheat mechanic, whatever it is. Let me quickly just change over here. If we go over here and if I, for example, show you this, if we go on Google, there's actually an EA help page that explains how it actually works. So we're just going to quickly go over here. So if we type in input overlay FIFA 21, if you go to EA help, so all you got to do is go to the EA help page. So I'll just show you this on the screen now. If we go over to EA help, you go to the first link, and then after you click on the first link, just type in input overlay. That's all you got to do. Internet is unfortunately not the fastest now, but we type in input overlay, and the first article you should be explaining how the input overlay works. If you want to see more information about that, feel free to do so. How to use input delay was updated today on Tuesday, and this way you can see how it is used, and it explains both of them. As you can see, I had this square in the background. The square in the background is something else. I'm referring to just the two controllers. Unfortunately, I can't turn the square in the background off. It's a long story, but it's just these two controllers. But I would pause this here if you want to leave this on. As I did mention, the second controller takes into account, once they've been processed by the FIFA game data service and your network. So if your gameplay, or let's say your connection is not that good, the servers in theory could be perfect, but it could be led astray by your network. And of course, one thing that is very much important as well is that obviously peer-to-peer matches online, they don't use online game data servers. So things like friendlies, as it says here, mean that the graphic displays actually perform on your physical controller as they're processed by the game. So that's certain things to bear in mind. But I'll leave this down below in the description. And the final thing is why does it take longer for online response graphic to show compared to local response? It's because factors like ping, packet loss, and jitter. And obviously, don't forget, it has to be sent to the server, then be processed, then be sent back. So don't expect both of these to be completely in sync. You are going to expect maybe like a slight delay, maybe a slight offset. So it won't be like completely exactly the same, but you should expect a slight delay, of course, with anything. But it shouldn't be like a massive differential delay difference. But anyway, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. That's just a quick example. I'm going to do my own testing. I'm going to get a NetDumer out anyway very, very soon, and hopefully do some testing on connection on servers, see if I can figure something out and let you guys know the response. But for now, that's information. Thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy, and I'll catch you next time. Peace out.